Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Subject Computer Application for 12th Standard C Section, Chapter 12 DNS Domain Name System Part 3. Last class we discussed about URL and their types, absolute URL and relative types, relative URL, and also discussed the DNS component. There are three DNS component. One is namespace, name server, and zone. Last class we discussed about namespace, the component of DNS. Now in this class we are going to discuss about name servers, zone, resolver, and how DNS work. So there are three important component of DNS. Number one, namespace, which was already discussed in previous lesson. In this session, we are going to discuss the name server and zone. Name server. The information which need to be stored in domain namespaces is quite large. Single system would not be sufficient and insufficient and inefficient to store such a huge amount of responding to requests from all over the world. For that purpose, the unreliable and failure of the data becomes inaccessible. The solution to this problem is to be distribute the information among many computers. For example, nowadays you can see many thousands of lakhs of crores of web pages are designed, and every web pages have many numbers of domain names. All the domain names are stored in a single computer is and it is not possible, and if you try it, then we will face the inefficiency, insufficient, and unreliable problems, and it leads to inaccessible. So in a single system, if you try to store all the web pages name and you want to access allow all the world to access that particular time in a single time in a simultaneous manner, then that computer may be hanged and no anyone can access that web pages, and this leads to inaccessibility to the internet. So this is the very big problem, storing and DNS. So for that purpose, these DNS names are separated, and all the DNS name separate parts and subdomain names parts are stored and in a individual computer. These individual computers are called name server. So here in this paragraph you can see the solution to this problem is to distribute the information among many computers. The best way to do that is dividing the entire space into a many domains and subdomains. DNS also allows domains to be further divided into subdomains. By this solution, we can able to solve the problem and obtain the hierarchy of servers is also maintained. So name server stores the data and provide it to client when queried by them. So whenever client server access any computer, that server is ready to provide all the necessary information. That name servers are programs that run on a physical system and store all the zone level data. So name server is a main part in the domain name system. So in the diagram you can see there was a web server, there was a host computer, there was a local DNS. In the same way, there was a different levels of name servers like root DNS name server, top level name server, authority name server. Whenever a host computer ask any query, for example, if a local computer, a host computer has to open google.com or any amazon.in or any flipkart.in, then that web page data are first transferred to local DNS. From that local DNS, all the names are searched in a separate computers. DNS name servers are stored in the root server, top level name server are stored here, and authority name servers are stored in this DNS server. All the DNS server return the information called by this local DNS. From the local DNS, all the necessary IP address are returned to the computer. From that, using that IP address, the host computer can access the web server and retain that in available data from the web server. So these servers only store the domain name as well as IP address of different levels of domain names from higher level to lower level. So name server is a main part in domain name system. It translates the domain name into IP addresses. Name server contains the DNS database, which consists of domain name and their corresponding IP address. For example, if you take the root DNS name server, then this root DNS name server consists all the organized organizations nature their domain name like org, com, gov, in, mil, like this, which we already discussed. All the DNS and their corresponding IP addresses are stored here in the root name server. Whenever this web page is accessed by the host, the local DNS give the top level domain names to this root server domain name root server and get the information, that is IP address of top level domain name, and return to the host computer. In the same way, the next top level called name of the organization and their IP addresses are stored in this computer. All the data are accessed here, and the name of the organization IP addresses are searched and returned to the host computer by this local DNS. In the same way, other DNS number and DNS domain name IP addresses are stored in the separate computers. Every computer have their own database, have their own DNS names and their respective IP addresses. Whenever any host asks the question through local DNS, then it will return the result of IP address. If there was no domain name which was asked by the host, then it will return the error message to local DNS. The same error is returned to the host computer also. So in the same way, name server name server do the important task of searching domain names while searching a website. Local name servers as the different name servers until one of them find out answer. At least returns IP address for the domain name. Your computer can now connect to the request web page store on the web server. After accessing the domain name servers, next we are going to see the different types of name server. There are three types of name servers which control the entire domain name system. One is root name server, another one is primary or master name server, third one is secondary or slave name server. So root name server is the otherwise called as a top level server which contains entire DNS tree. So all the DNS tree, complete address of the any web page is stored in this root name server maintained by ICANN. So ICANN is the organization where everyone should register their web page. Then only their URL is allotted by the ICANN, and their IP addresses also allotted by the ICANN to the every page in the world. There are 13 services of root server in the world. It was managed by the ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. The next server is master name server, contains a zone resource records. These records are updated by domain name holder such as organization. Next server is slave name server, contains a copy of the primary server, that is master server files. This server has no authority to update but reduce the workload of master server by sharing the queries. So master server name was maintained by organization, whereas slave name server is the duplicate of master server. So when master name server is busy, this slave server helps the reduce the work of the master name server, gives the necessary information which was copied from master name server to slave server to the user whenever master name server is busy. So these are the three types of name server. One is root name server, master name server, slave name server. Next one, what is zone? The entire namespace is divided into many different zones. It is the area up to which the server has access. Zone is defined as a group of contiguous domain name and subdomain names. For example, here you can see the diagram. .com is a zone. In the same way, the whole MHHEE is a domain name and zone and their domain name. From the root, each and every organization nature is called as zone, and each and every uh, name of the organization is called as zone. The zone which consists of another subzone. So every zone has a single domain. Then zone and domain name are the same. Every zone has a server which contains a database called zone file. Using the zone file, the DNS server replies the queries about the host in the zone. There are two copies of zone files available in master file as well as in slave files. So each and every node is called as zone. So here the dotted lines represent the zone. Each and every zone have their unique domain name, have their own domain, have their own zone, have their own server where we store all the names, DNS domain names and their IP addresses. And there were two copies of this zone name file. One is in master file computer, another one is slave file computer. Next one is the resolver. What is resolver? Domain name system is a client server application. A host system need to be mapped domain name to IP address or vice versa according to call, and that work is done by resolver. So resolver either asks server to provide information about IP address. If it does not find any information, then it sends the request to other server and so on. Once the resolver receives the mapping, it checks whether it is an error or resolution and provides a result according to that. So resolver is a software which is used to check the domain name and their respective IP addresses. If there was no domain name is found in any single server, then it go for next server. In the same way, resolver will check all the servers of the domain name system and try to find out the result for the question or the query. So when there was no answer for the query, then it simply returns the error message to the host. Next, how DNS work. So the last topic of the lesson is how DNS work. So in the diagram, you can able to understand how DNS work in a very simple manner. For example, any user who want to access the web page www.tnscrt.org, then what they do, they simply open the browser in their computer and type the web page. That is URL. That URL is transferred to resolver. From that resolver, all the domain names are sent to the local server. The local server first asks the root server and check whether the respective web page domain name IP address is available in the server or not. If the root server returns I don't know message, then local server move to the next server called org server and ask the details about the TNSCRT org website IP address. If here in the servers also, if local server receives don't know message, then local server moves to next server. So in this server, if the web page IP address is found, then this server return the IP address of that web page, that is domain name tnscrt.org, to the local server. Local server return to resolver. Resolver return the IP address to browser. By using the IP address, that particular web page can be accessed by the user. So this is how the whole DNS system works. So this is explained here in this topic. So I hope you understand the concept of DNS and the resolver, zone and local server names. Uh, if you have any doubt, contact me. Clear all your doubt. Prepare well for public or examination. Best of luck. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.